Great. So the question, just if people didn't hear it, is like kind of what's the central idea? So you didn't like my spaghetti, throwing spaghetti as the central idea? I mean, really the central idea is that this is a public space and that culture and recreation animate this space. And what's fundamental about that, so what we've learned in the 7 years of doing this, so we really started like with a guy and a guitar. We were like, oh, come over here and play and maybe someone else will come. I mean, that's actually a true story. Like, we talked, I remember at one point, somebody talked a food cart into getting on the ferry because we had nothing to eat here. And it was like, could you just like roll your cart onto the ferry and just come for a few hours? And I mean, that was literally how we started. But what has emerged, and I give talks like this actually in other cities, is that our approach to inviting and expecting that messy, cool programming, all forms of culture are part of public space, that coming to a public space and sharing it, that's actually new. And that's actually not what you find in municipal parks around the country. I was having breakfast yesterday with someone who runs an amazing museum in New York, and we were talking about this, and that basically you guys, right, because I'm ancient, right, I saw Deep Purple, right, just do that math. You know, the difference between what is food, what is performance, what is music, what is visual art, like those divisions are over. Right? But for people my generation, we still think that, you know, we came from food is in restaurants, theaters, you know, has to be reviewed in the New York Times. And so, but the challenge in cities is where is the place where all that messy stuff gets to happen? And so that's really the vision that animates this place. Ultimately a job, I was talking to somebody before, he said, oh, you're in charge of the arts here. And I said, well, that's great that you think that, but no, I'm actually run the whole thing, and that most of my time is spent worrying about, you know, that crane and drilling a water pipe to Brooklyn and what's going to be in all these vacant buildings. But what happened in the last 7 years was because we welcomed arts and culture, right? You're all here, right? The idea that people would get, like 7 years ago, if I'd said I'm going to give a talk on Governor's Island at 8 o'clock in the morning, I mean, I would have had to bring my dog. I mean, nobody would have come. But you all have a sense of what is Governor's Island, and that actually amazes me, right? Because if you add up all the days that you've been able to come here, it's like 40 days a year right now. It's not even a full year since I've started working here. So that's really the animating principle as we have to figure out, you know, how you pay, you're all paying for this, right? This is a publicly subsidized place, you know, and we believe that commercial uses and nonprofit uses really make sense here. This is not just a free public space, but that's really the animating idea. Did that answer your question? The sense of security. That's a really good. It's a really good observation. And I too, I had this conversation one weekend last year with a guy, and he was like blocking his bike, and he was really struggling. And I said, like, you don't have to do that. And I said, trust me, I work here. Like, you can just leave your bike. And so then what he and his family did is they like made a bike pile, so it would be really hard for people to disentangle it because he couldn't quite trust me. But really, where it's fundamental, and for those of you who have kids. What's really interesting is watching how parents deal with their kids out here. And there's actually a lot of interesting literature about what's happened to childhood, right? Which is childhood's really programmed, everyone's worried about security. And so when we were planning the park, there was this woman who said, like, don't tell anyone, but I just let my 8-year-old run around and I'm not quite sure where, you know, but like, don't tell other parents. And so I think, and so we've thought about that. So for example, we don't have, a really fundamental thing is there are no fences around play areas on Governor's Island. It is illegal, I don't have children, for me to go into a city playground without a kid. We don't do that here, right? Because we actually believe that you should be able to go on a swing, even though you're a grown-up, but also that we're not worried about that. So that's sort of a specific example of how we built that in, and that shared sense that you have. You know, you're all in the boat together. And the thing that I particularly love about this place is that it doesn't belong to anybody, so it actually belongs to everyone. And you see that over and over again. You'll see women in Chador next to Hasidic families, next to, you know, graphic designers. You know, everyone's kind of doing the same thing, and we love that. Are we going to screw that up? Yeah. You're one of the swooners. We call you the swooners. Oh, decrepitude. If you... We actually have art, you know, we have obviously a lot of artist groups who use our buildings, and they're always like, oh, it's getting too nice out here. Can we have the one with the peeling paint? You know, it's like, just don't eat that paint, please. You know, this place is going to change. You know, we're building a gorgeous park. It's going to change. And it's supposed to change. Like, it's really bad for those buildings to be vacant. Like, that's the worst thing you can do to a historic building, is not have somebody in it. And we pay for that. If you look at, there's a beautiful roof on this building, and I can tell you exactly how much that cost of your. But in all seriousness, it's why, it goes back to the first question. You know, this spirit and this place, that was created by New Yorkers. And so we will continue to welcome that. When you look at our park design, you won't see a puppet theater, an amphitheater, or little spaces for art, right? It's just a gorgeous park. Someone asked me the other day, well, what will you be able to do in it? And I was like, it'll just be beautiful, and you'll see the Statue of Liberty and just feel fabulous, you know, because we're not, people make stuff. People make that spirit. And yes, we hope the buildings will not be so decrepit, but it will never be a place on the way to somewhere else. It will always be an island. And no, there will not be a subway, and I don't think there'll be a tunnel or any of those other things. So it's really up to people to sort of preserve that spirit. Yes, rules are good. No dogs. There are no dogs on this island. We have like the basic rules of sort of respect of parks, no alcohol, no dogs. But I want to talk for a second about what you said about a blank slate. If people who remember who Herbert Muchamp was, who was a great architecture critic, I remember he said to me, you know, don't ever say something's a blank slate. You know, things happened here. People lived here. Children grew up here. And there's a history of this place. And we try to honor that. We have a beautiful sound piece, which is our first permanent art piece. And it uses the tones of taps. And when you come back, when the park is finished, you'll be able to hear it. It's by an artist, Susan Phillips. And what we love about that piece, Susan's an extraordinary artist, is that actually taps was played here every single day when this was a military base. And now it will be played again, but interpreted by an artist. And so we're always thinking about how do we connect back to what was here before. But we also do have rules of safety. I mean, you know, I am responsible for your safety while you are here. And that is really important and logistically complex. So one of the things that, you know, we have all these usual rules, but what we found is that people really respect this place and view it as a privileged place. And I think that one of the reasons is because everyone who works here knows that it's all about you. And so whoever you interact with, right, they all work for different companies, our security team, our ferry team, but our mission is to animate this place by making it a place for New Yorkers. And I think that everyone who comes here, whether you come here for the first time or many times, feels that respect. And then in turn, all of you have respected this place much more sometimes than you find in other public spaces. So we're very thrilled with that balance. Things that okay, I have lots of ideas that haven't happened, right? So lots of spaghetti that falls to the ground, you know, where I think, you know, it's a brilliant idea, but nobody wants to actually produce it. Things that haven't worked. Okay, I have to think for a second. I'm going to come, not that everything's worked, but I'm all about failure, but. Yeah, well, I mean, like we had it's too small of an idea. We did an exhibit. I'll tell you something, not that it didn't work, but we ended up not doing it, and I thought it was important. So we had this idea that like we would have all these sort of, you know, iPhone, you know, guides to Governor's Island, right? Click, click, have Adrian talk about his design. And, you know, I started investigating it and how that would all work. And then I kind of looked around and I realized people were not on their phones. They were not texting out here. And I was like, and let's be honest, cell phone service is very erratic out here, and there's definitely certain spots where if you want to, I can tell you exactly where to be if you want to like be interrupted. You know, there's places where I sometimes call people where I know that my call will be interrupted, will be dropped. But I sort of looked around and I went like, actually, those same people who are like, just like me, you know, going through, you know, Union Square Park going, they're not doing it here. So like, that was a stupid idea. And like, so we just stopped developing that idea because I was like, people should just look up and feel this place. So that's an example where like, we had a whole plan to sort of use media interpretation, and we're not doing any of it. And that really came from looking around and going, yes, we need better cell phone service, but it's kind of great that people don't feel that need to be here. So does that, yeah. And then, you know, we do have many, I really wanted a corn maze, but we don't have that. So sponsored by Target. Wouldn't that have been cool? Then like Google Maps would have been able to see it. And But now we're building a park there instead. So that's never going to happen. But thanks to the Bloomberg administration, we're building something better. I guess I have to stop. Hi, Tina. Hi. I feel like Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. Hi, Tina.
I think we're running out of time.
We're running out of time. Thank you all for being here. We have some members of our team. If people want to stay for tours, we have an incredible carousel festival. That was an example that had not occurred to me. Those people came to us. And you'll get a preview of the park. And then we're open every weekend, 10 to 7, until the end of September. And we'll be finishing the park, and it'll be growing over the winter. And then next year, you'll get to frolic in it.
Let's give Leslie a big hand. This was wonderful.